Have you ever taken a break, stopped doing anything productive, and immediately felt guilty? That guilt of doing nothing that makes it impossible to actually enjoy the rest. This might be the explanation for why you're so exhausted. And I'm not talking about physical tiredness. I mean the kind that comes from constant overstimulation and the inability to simply stop. Because the moment silence shows up, you automatically fill it. Not because you have something important to do, but because being without stimulation, even for a few seconds, has become uncomfortable in a way that's hard to even notice. Is having a constant stimulus actually productive? No, but your brain thinks it is. You put on a podcast while you walk and feel like you're making good use of your time, when you're probably absorbing 1% of it. You pull out your phone in the elevator and it seems completely reasonable. 2 hours free, you find something to fill them. 2 minutes, same thing. You're never still, but you're never truly present either. I remember being a kid and time just moving differently. There was a stillness to it that I genuinely enjoyed. And the funny thing is that the moments I remember most clearly came right after we'd hit peak boredom. That's exactly when the best ideas showed up, the ones that actually stuck. So a question came to me. When was the last time I was actually bored? For most people, that question's uncomfortable, because the honest answer is we don't remember. The French philosopher Blaise Pascal wrote that all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly alone in a room. Boredom's always been treated as a problem to fix, but nobody talks about what happens when you eliminate it completely, when there's never any space between you and silence, and distraction stops being something you choose and becomes something that just happens before you even decide. That's exactly what's happened to an entire generation, the tired society. Before we get into it, if you notice what's in the background, that's a Minecraft world I built myself. I put it on because playing while I think really helps me relax. I don't usually bring up the game because I know not everyone watching is into it, but it felt weird not to mention it. And while I'm at it, thank you for the community we're building here. I always read the comments, and it genuinely means a lot that you share your thoughts down there. We live in a culture that's turned productivity into a moral value. It's not just that you need to be efficient at work, you're supposed to be efficient every single moment of the day. Free time that isn't used is wasted time, and rest that doesn't recharge you to produce more has no point. And gradually, without anyone explicitly telling you this, you've internalized that logic so completely that you no longer question it. We set ourselves increasingly higher goals, demand constant improvement, constant progress, and that self-imposed pressure creates something very specific, a chronic exhaustion that a vacation won't fix, and a persistent dissatisfaction because the bar keeps rising before you can celebrate reaching it. Rest stops being a state and becomes a formality. The result's a paradox, a society full of people who have everything yet feel empty and permanently worn down, not because they work too hard physically, but because they never stop. There's never a moment of genuine inner silence. And without that silence, the mind can't process, can't rest, can't restore itself. It just keeps accumulating. There's a mechanism psychologists call normative disassociation, the process by which you stop listening to yourself and lock onto an external stimulus instead. The moment the slightest hint of boredom appears, the mind immediately goes looking for something to grab onto. And the problem isn't that mechanism itself. Seeking distraction's completely normal. The problem's doing it obsessively and automatically. For entertainment to cure boredom, you have to actually be bored first. Think about it this way. Imagine you had access 24 hours a day for the rest of your life to the best food in the world, and that before you felt even the faintest hint of hunger, you were already eating. Would you still enjoy food? No, because the pleasure of eating requires actually being hungry first. Entertainment works exactly the same way. Nothing truly satisfies because you never reach the point of needing it before you go looking for it. The threshold keeps climbing. You need more, faster, more intense, and still, nothing ever quite fills the gap. Boredom tolerance decreases. The less you allow yourself to be bored, the less capable you are of tolerating it. What used to feel like a neutral moment becomes physically uncomfortable, a kind of low-level anxiety that only quiets down when you find something to throw your attention at. And this shows up in situations you'll probably recognize. You're eating alone and you need something playing in the background because silence over a meal just feels off. Even when you're trying to sleep and your mind won't stop, instead of letting it settle, you open an app to shut it up. And the brain, which learns through repetition, has concluded that empty moments simply should not exist. And this goes beyond entertainment. It affects how you read, how you hold a conversation, how you work. When your brain's used to receiving a new stimulus every few seconds, any activity that requires sustained attention becomes genuinely frustrating. A 100-page book feels like a commitment. A task that requires deep focus gets abandoned after 10 minutes, not because you're incapable, because you've trained your brain to expect the next stimulus before the current one's finished. So what's the answer? Just sit there and do absolutely nothing? Yeah, and here's why that actually matters. There are people for whom staying constantly distracted makes complete sense. Someone who's lost a loved one, gotten bad news, or is going through something really hard. For that person, filling every moment with stimulation is how they stay afloat. I'd rather watch anything than sit alone with that thought. I'd rather scroll than let my mind go there. That makes total sense. It's a survival mechanism. The problem is when you repeat that same pattern and you're not sad, and there's no specific pain you're running from. Then the question is, what exactly are you running from? We've glorified multitasking like it's a skill, like being able to do several things at once is a sign of intelligence or efficiency. But what actually happens when you split your attention between multiple activities is that you're not fully present in any of them. You're watching a show while texting, playing a video game with a podcast running in the background, technically doing multiple things, genuinely doing none of them. The human mind isn't built for that. Studies show that switching focus from one task to another carries a real cognitive cost, what researchers call task switching cost. Every transition requires a reset. Stack those resets throughout the day, and the cost compounds. Concentration deteriorates, patience shrinks, and tolerance for anything that doesn't offer instant stimulation drops to almost zero. Think of it like a lion chasing a gazelle, just about to close the gap. And then it spots another one that looks bigger and changes direction. Then another. Then another. It ends up with nothing. That's what happens to an overstimulated mind. Not a lack of ability, just an attention so fragmented that nothing ever gets enough of you to actually get finished. And the paradox is that the more you try to do at once, the worse you do everything. Multitasking doesn't make you more productive. It gives you the feeling of being productive while quietly lowering the quality of everything you touch. At some point, you probably told yourself you just don't have enough free time, that if the schedule opened up, things would feel different. But it's worth asking honestly, is it really that you don't have time, or is real free time just uncomfortable? Because real free time isn't Netflix. It isn't a playlist or hanging out with friends. All of that involves stimulation. Real free time is what's left when there's nothing external to grab onto. Just you, your thoughts, and nowhere specific to be. And that specific kind of time is exactly what we keep finding ways to avoid. Not because we're lazy or shallow, but because in that silence, things surface. Questions without clean answers. Feelings that never quite got processed. Stuff we've been quietly sidestepping without fully acknowledging it. And the brain, which is remarkably good at steering away from discomfort, prefers the endless feed over facing any of that. What the brain doesn't account for is the long-term cost. Because avoiding those thoughts doesn't make them disappear, it just delays them. And every time you delay them, they stack up, get heavier. And a lot of that exhaustion you feel, that sensation of being simultaneously overfull and completely empty, comes from years of silences that never happen. Conversations with yourself that kept getting postponed. Here's what nobody tells you about actually sitting with silence. The first few minutes are rough. The mind resists, jumps around, looks for a way out. But if you stay with it, something shifts. The noise settles on its own. Not because you forced it, but because you finally gave it room. And in that room, things show up that you didn't know were there. Clarity on something that had been weighing on you. An idea that had been trying to surface. Or just a quiet that you genuinely forgot was possible. Silence isn't the problem. Silence is where things actually get resolved. In recent years, there's been a growing trend of people self-diagnosing ADHD. And I want to be clear, ADHD is real. It's documented, and it genuinely impacts the people who have it. But it's not biologically possible for 90% of the population to have a neurological condition they were born with. What's possible is that a huge number of people have developed what I'd call hyperattention, a learned inability to hold focus on one thing for any meaningful stretch of time. That distinction matters because a condition you're born with and a habit you've built up over years of constant exposure to fast, fragmented stimulation are very different things. If you learned it, you can unlearn it. Hyperattention isn't who you are. It's the result of years of training your brain in a specific direction. And everything that's learned, with time and intention, can be reversed. I know all of this is a lot easier to understand than to actually put into practice. It means going against a habit you've been reinforcing for years without realizing it. And that's hard. I noticed it myself while putting this video together. How many times I interrupted the process to reach for something I didn't need. How many times sitting with an unfinished thought felt uncomfortable enough that I found a reason to step away? And I've been thinking about this stuff for a while. That says a lot about how deep this goes. So here's a concrete exercise. Pick 1 hour next week, any hour, and commit to doing absolutely nothing during it. No music, no podcast, no phone, no background noise, just you. During that hour, write down whatever comes up, not to analyze it or make it meaningful, just to observe, to see what's actually there when you stop filling the space. And if you want to share what came up, the comments are right there. What surfaces in that hour will tell you more about yourself than most things you'll consume this week. And if just thinking about doing this already makes you want to skip it, that's probably exactly why you needed to watch this video.